Hello and welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 143.
Nice.
Yeah, and we have just finished recapping season 6 of The Walking Dead in time for the onset of Fear the Walking Dead season 3.
That is a very good word for it.
Yeah, because it feels like an affront. I am coming into this season, as our listeners will know, full of hope and joy, and
I am entering it full of cynicism and negativity
and hatred. So I'm like the Jedi. HA is like the Sith. I'm Stuart. This is HA. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, cool. So we don't have any news this week. We're just going to jump right into our recap of the first couple episodes of Fear the Walking Dead, which were both released on the same evening. Eye of the Beholder and The New Frontier. They definitely are not a double feature episode. They were just released that way for some reason because they have completely different authors and directors.
Yeah, I felt kind of like they were doing this to fit it into whatever timing schedule they have, maybe. So. Yeah,
it's quite opaque to me. However, what is noticeable is they opened with pretty bad numbers for a Walking Dead title anyway. 3.1 million for the somehow they have a bunch of people tuned out after the first half of the episode also. 3.1 million for Eye of the Beholder, and then 2.7, their lowest ever, for the second episode, The New Frontier.
I can understand why this happened.
I don't know. I feel like people would have stuck around until about 10 minutes into The New Frontier and then thrown their television out of the window in pure rage.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know.
Maybe we should wait until we get to that point to
I just like as an overall pacing issue, I especially felt it in episode 1 that there was a lot of things that didn't need the way they handled the timing of certain things and certain plot points. I felt like they took a little too much time with that, but we can get into it as we review it. And yeah. I suspect that may be the reason for the tune out of the fans who probably tuned in, perhaps in joyful expectation as you did, and were like, oh, wait, we've seen this show before. But anyway, I'm gonna join you on this journey, no matter where it takes us. I'm definitely going to leave my mind open a little bit. So, without further ado, dive in.
When we last left our great heroes, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't gone back and rewatched the end of the last season. I think that Nick and Luciana were ambushed with all the people from the
compound,
the compound. Everybody else ran away. A few people got killed, and then they got rolled up. Nick and Lucy.
Yep, and then Madison.
Ophelia had been rolled up in an episode or two prior. Mm-hmm. So she was, and Strand was back at the hotel. But yeah, Maddie and Travis and Alicia were kind of out on their own. They were not in anybody else's company. Right.
But they were seeking Nick.
Yes. But then when we first see them, they are not by themselves. They have been captured.
Yep, they've been captured. Once again, army guys are in bad juju in the show. It doesn't really give you any context for how they were captured. They're just captured.
One person, Travis, does say they were totally military until the last second or something like that, giving me the impression that they just got snuck up on. But instead of shooting them all, they captured them.
Right.
So it seems like Nick's group got the short end of the stick in that scenario.
Perhaps. But they're getting this is they're not exactly treating them well. They're kind of they're controlling them. They're dragging them past these dismembered walker corpses, and they're definitely treating them like prisoners. So I don't, and given their last experience with the military, I don't know that they feel very positive about this whole situation. And even when they try to ask questions, they are treated pretty roughly, especially Travis.
They're just dragged away, separated by gender, and then driven to different places.
Right. And it immediately reminded me of 28 Days Later, that whole vibe
Yeah.
when they come upon what they think is a refuge, and then it turns out not to be such. And they separate the men and the women, and there's definitely a very specific idea that you get, and that was immediately what like jumped to my mind when this happened. Travis is taken into this other room. He walks by a prisoner who is was he dead at that point, or was no? He was just being like he was just tied to the wall, I think. And they
They'd
were
shot
all
him. You'd heard some gunshots before you see him. So
oh,
and they were
okay.
joking about how it took 2 bullets.
Okay, so sorry. So yeah, but it's so he's not feeling positive, I would imagine, about his situation. Gets dragged into this room, sits down, kind of looking around. Everybody seems either injured or quiet or just very scared in that room. And lo and behold, we see Nick appear with Lucy, who is sort of sub. They both are a little. She's unconscious. She's leaning on him.
Yeah, she's down for the count.
And they both
Let's
kind
talk a
of
little
like.
bit about this military base, though. It's but like because before we get into the nitty gritty of
Yeah.
that scene, there's this huge establishing shot once they're driven into the base. It's very CG, but there are dozens and dozens of people inside this base. There's Humvees driving around. There's power. There's smoke coming up or steam coming up from like a dozen different chimneys or little vents in all these different buildings. It's the scope and scale of this operation is enormous. It never feels this big again
No, but
because
that's kind
by
of.
the time by the time they leave, there's just like a handful of vehicles.
Mhm.
But it's kind of a crazy way to establish this new place that they've arrived.
Right. There's definitely soldiers running around. I forgot to mention that they weigh Travis and they treat him like they measure his height. It's kind of a weird thing. That's kind of creepy. And then after we see like a very brief scene where Nick spots him, it immediately flashes to what's going on with Madison and Alicia, and they are being treated very differently because they're brought into this weird office. You definitely have a soldier in there that's playing good cop, bringing them tea, and just kind of being creepy, but, you know, it's hard to tell what's going on at this point. Questioning them, basically saying he separated them because he wants that they all have to be processed and he wants to compare stories. This is definitely the 28 Days Later vibe. Like, they separate the women from the men. And so
Yeah.
I felt like the heebie-jeebies for them here. And
It also feels really weird that Troy is apparently in charge.
yeah, he's super
Uh,
young.
he's like 19. He has no rank on his BDUs, so and his collar's popped. Like he's clearly not military.
No.
His hair's too long. He hasn't shaven, but he's wearing a uniform, and he's like a child, and all these people who apparently follow him around. It's just a strange dynamic. It's like, well, why is this happening? It becomes clear pretty quickly as the next episode
Shows us
gets
that.
into it, but it's odd.
But even the way Madison is interacting with him, she is cautious, but she's also a little bit manipulative with him. I think that
Yeah.
she clearly knows that he is not a soldier. I think anyway, in the way she's handling him, because I think she's just trying to figure out what the lay of the land is and what advantage she can take, and seeing how she can maybe play to his sympathies. She mentions that she's looking for her son, and if he was missing, wouldn't he want his mom to like look for him? He's like, my mom's dead. So, and in a super creepy way, but that is she is not convinced by whatever facade he's trying to put up at all. And at least she's just kind of hanging out.
She's not really engaging very much at all. She's letting her mom run the show.
Yep. And then, so they very smartly, though, don't drink what he is providing, because my immediate thought was that was drugged, and I'm like, good job.
Yeah. Pouring it in the plants. Yeah, I like the fact that they didn't even
Bother
they didn't
to-
even pretend to fall for that. I mean, they waited till he was out of the room, but yeah.
Yeah. And he kept saying things like, "Oh, my mom used to like to drink this when it was piping hot." And they're like, "Yeah, good try. We're not doing that." Um, and it quickly becomes, anytime you hear a word like processing, your alarm bells are going to go off a little bit. And he tries to give the sense that they are a benevolent group, just kind of trying to look out for themselves and protect themselves. But if they were, then it would not be too long before they had sort of sent them on their way. And he dangles a little bit of a carrot in front of them about that point. And he won't really give Madison straight answers about Travis and what's going on with Travis.
No, he's straight up lying to everybody.
Yeah, and she knows that, and it's clear, and she's just like, "Oh, this is not," and immediately is trying to figure out other plans, and it goes to twirly mustache villain type behavior pretty quickly with what's going on in this compound. Just in terms of what they are doing there and what's going on with the Wayne and all that stuff with the prisoners. And Travis and the other injured people are hearing what's going on in the other room, which is basically they're doing some weird supposed observations of the walkers and how long it takes people to turn based upon weight, based upon height, and other factors, I guess. But it's kind of, did you find this part just really strange? I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's like psychopathic behavior. And like the more you get to know his family and the rest of the scenario, it doesn't make any sense that he's got this many people going along with it.
Well, that's the part that bothered me. And also, they're on this base, which has a ton of supplies. As we find out a little bit later, their goal is they're supposed to be getting fuel and other things from this base, and they would waste their time doing this. I find that a little bit. I don't find that plausible, and I also don't find it plausible, at least to the extent that we now know about the sanctuary. We've heard that word before. To the extent that we know a little bit about the sanctuary, and again, they have a right, Madison's group has a right to be skeptical. They've seen this kind of thing before. But based upon what we're hearing from Good Brother Jake and all that stuff, this doesn't seem like this many people. If his brother's a throwback, would they actually be following him? I don't know. I don't think that they would. It just doesn't feel right. So anyway, but I guess they have to have the twirling mustache and sort of conflict scenario in order to get this group separated and back together again.
They do, but going big picture, to start off with Troy being so evil, it's like he's at an irredeemable level already.
Right. And it's immediate.
It makes the rest of the story so hard to even figure out. Anyway, so there's another prisoner starts talking to Travis.
Steven.
In the prison. Is his name Steven?
Yeah, he's like, "Hey, I'm Steven," and kind of goes immediately in.
For everybody else who was like obsessed with how familiar looking this guy is and his voice, it is, of course, the actor Ross McCall, who played Liebgott in Band of Brothers. So there you go. You're welcome.
Yeah, it was driving me crazy until Stuart figured that one out.
He's so familiar. Yep. So he's like, "I can get you out of here. I know the tunnels," or some blah blah. It seems far fetched. He's wounded. You're like, "Oh, I don't feel good about your chances, Liebgott."
Yep.
Steven.
Yep. And then there's plenty of fodder in there, and all the soldiers are kind of bored. They start dragging the prisoners into the other room. There's enough red shirts in there with him that you're like, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen to those guys." And then they kind of arbitrarily decide, "Hey, we need to speed things up, so let's make two at once." And it's a kind of an odd moment just to see what's going on with Travis and Nick. And Travis and Nick, their reunion is interesting because Travis has to tell Nick that his son is dead, and Nick's just silent, and, it's just kind of a conflicted thing, I'm sure, given Chris's behavior. But did you notice how much they stressed Travis's Maori heritage?
Yeah, they say it a bunch of times in this episode.
Like a bunch of times. It's really interesting. And I mean, they do say it in, I think, the first season as well.
One time at the lighthouse.
But in this one, I counted probably 3 or 4 times.
Apparently, survivalists are the ones who are obsessed with this shit because that episode was also a survivalist family, right?
Yep.
The weird island. Yeah. So the soldier in charge of like the death detail is this very child faced guy. Actor's name is Noel Fisher. I wish I could put a finger on what exactly it is that is so his name's Willie. Why exactly he's so familiar looking, but he's been in a lot of stuff. Hatfields and McCoys, which I did watch on the History Channel, which is actually a really good miniseries. Some Criminal Minds, some Law and Order, some. He's the voice of Michelangelo in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
He was on Shameless. Do you watch that at all?
No, never. Anyway, he's good in this role. The like youthful looking serial killer is always a good one.
I mean, I don't know exactly where. I agree with you. I think he looks very familiar, but I also think he has one of those faces as well.
Oh, could be.
Just kind of that everyman face.
But. Yeah, could be. But so Travis is also exhibiting just like, you remember when he was like the reasonable guy, like the English teacher?
Uh-huh.
Now he's just like
now he's a warrior.
I'll get you out of this. I'll get you out of this room. He can just say things like that, and you're like, okay. He is 100. He's 100% just a warrior now because he killed those two teenagers in the at the hotel. That's like the extent of his violence, and now he's a professional herder of people. Yeah. So he makes this promise, and then things go from bad to worse, or I guess better for them. He manages to get one of the soldiers killed
by timing it with a reanimation pretty quickly.
Yeah, whenever a person is banking on a reanimation to save their ass, it's always kind of funny.
I know, like they did the very conspicuous leg twitch, and Travis looks at it, and then he's like, "All right, take me." It was very very well timed, Travis. And his biggest concern at this point is to get his family out. That's what he keeps saying. And so he actually he sacrifices himself to get Nick and Lucy out, and but there was Steve, who is also a little bit selfish, and Nick's just like, she goes down first, and like wastes time by like fighting over who's going to go down to the tunnels first, which I thought was funny. And then, predictably, Steve gets done in and thrown down to be, I guess, a walker to take them out.
And he must turn in like 10 minutes, too. The turnings are happening at this crazy...
Well, they are and random pace, too. But the way he, like, cuts Steve's throat, I don't know, his head would kind of hang down the back of him. I don't know how effective as a walker he'd be. But apparently effective enough. But
yeah, so Nick and Lucy end up in like these sewer tunnels underneath the base. Travis gets rolled up right away and sent to some sort of fate that is worse than apparently getting lined up against a wall and shot to turn into a zombie. That was what he was facing, and the guy's like, no, now you get this other thing.
Now you're special. And I mean, some of this is definitely because of the things Madison has said, that she loves him, that and she has been given a deal. And the deal is if she and Alicia agree to go with this group, and of course immediately you're like, this sounds terrifying, and he says he'll let Travis go, which of course he's lying, and she keeps saying, are you being honest with me? And of course Troy is not being honest with her. That guy is terrifying. But in this case he says, take Travis to the back, and you're like, that can't be good. Travis is not. Those are never words that bode well.
After that scene comes one of the most inventive
that was pretty
and
good.
Horrifying, invasive attacks on a person.
Agreed.
That is non-fatal.
Mm-hmm.
With the old spoon in the eye.
Yep. Pretty good.
If you see some of the behind-the-scenes stills, it's even worse.
Oh, it's rough. It's pretty rough. The minute I see her hand going, I'm like, oh no, are they really going to do that? And they did. And I'm like, oh my God, she like cut his eye out with a spoon. Wasn't that in like Robin Hood King Thieves? Like cut his heart out with a spoon because it'll hurt more.
The thing is, I don't think she has actually done any permanent damage. Because I
Hmm.
think in the next episode, I think we're gonna see his eye again.
Ew, I don't want to see his eye again. It's
Yeah,
pretty, I mean, it's gotta be like gougy, no?
you would think, especially if you've seen some of those stills where it's
It's pretty
whoa,
far in.
bulgy, because the spoon is about to pop it out.
Okay, so she's using him as a hostage, and clearly he is valuable. He is a leader enough that they don't want to do anything. But what my question is, it's not like some of them definitely have a clear shot of her, and none of them take it. So that's
Because,
interesting.
it's the whole dead man switch sort of thing. Like, if I
Uh,
shoot her, she could still scoop out his eye and probably wouldn't kill him. Or she could shove it all the way in and definitely
kill
wouldn't kill
him.
him.
I don't know, but that's kind of weird. And then we have the entrance of Jake here because she basically wants to be led to Travis. She's getting weird information. She's kind of getting surrounded by soldiers. Alicia's running off to go and get like a car, and she's got her very handy switchblade. That was no help during this fight. The spoon was obviously better. But this enters Jake, the good guy, and that switches our narrative a little bit because Jake's like, I know you don't have to trust me, but I know he caused this. And this is the first indication that Troy is like some, maybe not even less of what we thought he was. Because immediately people start to defer to Jake, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I see people saluting, like, the whole way that these two young guys are in charge of all these grizzled veterans is still kind of a mystery to me. But yeah, all Jake has to do is say, we're not going to hurt these people. And yes, people do not hurt them. But I don't know. I don't trust any of these people. Any of these
Oh
foot
no,
soldiers who are out
I don't
here
know
with
that I would
Troy.
have. I would have been like, we need to see Travis first. I don't know that I would have released him, but she does, which is kind of weird. And then finally finds out where Travis is, and in the meantime, Travis has been undergoing a pretty horrific time himself in a gladiator pit of walkers, which is fun.
Another just absurd scene.
Oh,
I'm
it's
glad
crazy.
that he got to do it. I'm glad that
Me
we got to
too.
see Travis raging out and going into beast mode and stuff on I don't know,
Maori beast mode.
a
That's
dozen
awesome.
zombies. It's so absurd.
And he's got some good weaponry, like in some DIY weaponry down there in the pit. He's got, some cinder blocks and
Yep.
all sorts of stuff going on. He's got some piping and, you know, all sorts of things like that. Um, and these guys are pretty sadistic. So, we've seen him kind of go into berserker mode and do the first round, and then they let the rest of them out. So we don't know what's happened to him, but it doesn't look good. And then when they get to the pit, he has apparently been triumphant, and there's just like random walkers all around, which actually looks like fewer walkers than were in the pit to begin with. So I'm
Yeah,
not sure how that worked.
it does. It does. It looked like there were another 8 or 10 or something
Yeah.
waiting to come in there, but there's not that. It doesn't seem like there's that many on the ground.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Nick and Lucy are in the tunnel trying to figure out a way out, and then the crazy Steven guy attacks them, and somehow manages to be in just the right spot where Alicia is able to come to his rescue and throw him a knife.
That was pretty funny.
And then they are somehow dragged out. We don't even know how I don't know, the soldiers just drag them out of there. I don't know how they even do it. And
Yeah, they just show up like,
yeah, like it's kind of weird, right?
yeah.
But anyway,
Uh,
happy family reunion here.
it's somehow they tied up all these loose ends, even with this insane story of an insane person and a bunch of crazy people who must follow this insane person.
Yep.
And we
Um,
also we see a little scene between Troy and Jake where Jake's like, "Why do you think you were allowed to come out here? It's because you're crazy," or something along those lines. I'm
yeah,
like,
you're
"Wait,
an
no, you don't
outcast.
give the crazies the responsibilities. You're
No.
not supposed to. You're supposed to marginalize or make
Yeah,
them in
or
charge of
I don't know,
toilets."
or something, and somebody's supposed to be watching out for them. You don't put them in a
Yeah,
situation where they can somehow take command, which clearly he has because he's got all of his
yeah.
little sadistic followers. And so there's that. And again, it makes me wonder, like, if this is the dynamic and they're immediately listening to Jake, why would they ever have listened to Troy?
Yeah.
And then our favorite little everyman gets his comeuppance pretty in a very, very horror film kind of a way.
Willie. Oh yeah, the being pulled through the wall so that your back and head snap backwards, And like, yeah, listen, hearing the sound
And
in the
there's
wall and like
rats.
bending down to listen, and that there's rats. Yes, all
What?
of this was very horror movie esque, but I
Well,
appreciated
was
that it was like a classic throwback.
Oh no, it totally was. But he's a soldier that's been out here for as long as Madison and their group. I, if you're hearing those rumblings in the walls, chances
You're
are
like,
that's not something you need to find out about. I think you're going to start walking quick in the other direction.
yeah.
Yet,
You quickly go up the stairs. You say, guys, there's probably zombies in the walls
let's
downstairs.
run.
We should go.
Yeah, there's zombies in the walls, zombie wall. But it was done very, very well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, everybody knew what was happening, what was about to happen, but it went down. It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, and so it comes with a round of applause.
Right.
But then, of course, in the way of The Walking Dead, the zombies that go through the drywall in the basement of this one building suddenly have covered the entire base.
Right.
In
The Clark
short order.
Madison's group, they basically said thanks, but no thanks to Jake, and had said they were on their way out. But because of this sudden surge of zombies, Madison and Nick are kind of in this circle, forced to fend for themselves and cut off from Travis and Alicia, and Travis sees that he has to help Alicia with Lucy, so he can't come to Madison's aid, and so it ends up that the group is separated again. And this also seems like, okay, once again, group is separate. And Madison's got this really super weird choice because Troy suddenly comes over the truck, is like, get in. And it's like, you just spoon this dude's eye out. Like, what?
Well, he does shoot a bunch of zombies, and save her first. He's not just like,
I
come with
know,
me.
but still, it's a little weird.
Yeah, it is. It's very weird. It's very much a moment where she has zero other choice because they're surrounded and they're gonna die if they don't do it.
Right. But then Troy is like, "Hey, we're all going to the same place. This will be a great road trip." And we've got a very pensive Travis looking down at the truck, and he seems, probably worried that she's with Troy. But there seems to be other stuff going on, which I think we can talk about in the next episode.
And as they leave the base in the helicopter, you do see the convoy leave the base, and I think it was 4 vehicles.
Yeah. After all that, and when it seemed like a totally rock and roll base that was able to take out the entire colony people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
It seemed a little bit too convenient to me.
Right. And even in the CG overview scene, there's probably 20 or 30 people on screen. Little fake computer people, but still, they knew when they were, well, maybe they built that shot after they had shot the end of the episode, so nobody told them, hey, don't only put about 20 people on screen,
right?
Or maybe we're supposed to believe that half of their people were just killed in this super fast zombie takeover of the base. Either way, it's like, what? I could have sworn you made it look like this place was booming, and now they're one helicopter which is only 2 of the broke jaw folk, and then 4 other Vics, and at least one of them is a fuel truck. That's all they went there for, and they leave with 1 fuel truck?
Yeah, and they left a ton of stuff behind. And I will also say that the surge of zombies doesn't even seem that crazy when you talk about the fact that you've all got weapons, and if there's still a ton of supplies, wouldn't you take them? You left so much behind. So anyway, that was a little strange.
It's a very, very odd.
Yep. And so that closes out that episode. And then we are on to the next one, which is The New Frontier.
The New Frontier was written by Mark Richards, directed by Stefan Schwartz, and only had 2.7 million viewers somehow. And this is a very troubling episode. Certainly the beginning of it is.
It is, and now we realize why certain things happened in the last episode. We first open on the scene with our helicopter group. So we've got Jake, Charlene, who's the pilot, and one of the sanctuary people. And then we got Travis, Alicia, and Lucy. And Lucy's in a bad way, but she's got an IV going on. And there's this whole thing about weather and them being 20 minutes out, but having to be radio silent. So you do feel like they are taking some precautions, and they get ambushed somehow, which seems also a little random because they're in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nighttime. They do have lights on, but still, this is some unrealistic,
Yeah.
accurate shooting.
Yeah.
So they take like engine damage and some Travis damage.
Yep. So it seems at first that Travis is just hit in the neck, but it's much worse than that. He's starting to freak out. Alicia's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Jake's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And then he just says, "Help me, help me." And then he's trying to unbuckle himself. And, I actually had thought before this happened that he had sustained injuries in the Walker fight. He was acting kind of weird, and I thought maybe he had a bite he wasn't showing, and that's why he was kind of freaking out. He also had like a sheen of sweat going on even before all the shooting happened. But any question of that doesn't matter at this point because he kind of shows that he's totally been like his whole stomach is like ground meat.
Yeah.
And so I guess the idea was that he got shot there as well, or that
I think the idea is that it was one bullet. At least this is the way that I
okay.
saw Dave Erickson describe it on on Talking Dead later.
Okay.
One bullet comes through the floor of the helicopter, brings a bunch of shrapnel with it, and exits through his neck. So it's gone through his entire body.
Right. And he is being the hero one last time and doesn't want to turn into a walker in the helicopter where Alicia is. And so basically throws himself out of the helicopter. It's pretty fast. I admit I did not know that he was leaving the show, so I was taken aback a little bit. But I did have an inkling that something like this would happen after they did the whole warrior thing with him. It was kind of his long goodbye. And it does make me sad. I would have liked to have seen more with this character.
He was like the only badass in our group.
I know, and he was like evolving, and I'm very sad that he is no longer with the group. It makes me but maybe he was like, I just can't take any more Fear the Walking Dead. I gotta get out of this, man.
Yeah. I mean, not that actors should ever really have to be fans of the products they're working on. And I think that Ian McKellen really spoiled us all when he was such a huge fan of Gandalf and Lord of the Rings when he did that. Like, we all got spoiled by that. We know that Cliff Curtis had never read or watched The Walking Dead before he got cast in this role. And I don't think
he ever did.
The guy really gives a shit. I mean, who cares? That's fine. That's his prerogative. So, and you know what? He got picked up for 4 Avatar movies. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that that's why he left the show. Even though in the press release, they're like, oh, there's going to be no conflict. Yeah, we know why.
Yeah,
because
they were already done. They were like, yeah, we're getting him out of there.
He calls up Bob Kirkman and says, hey, just let me out. I'm getting off the ride. I've got, God knows what that contract looks like. It's probably beautiful, though. So, no conflict of interest in the shooting because he's done and he's going to go off and be a blue person. Congrats.
Communicate with trees. It'll be awesome. But, Alicia's pretty upset. And the helicopter goes down. So that's not a good scenario for the folks in the helicopter. And also in this episode, we now see what's going on at the wonderful beach resort with our good friends, Elena and Hector and Strand. And things are kind of very strange there, and they still have like the outside people trying to get in, demanding to be let in, and somehow manage. Like, did you find this whole scene very strange and contrived? Do you think Elena would actually have gotten anywhere near that gate?
Yeah, and why is Strand's idea to pretend to be a doctor to like diffuse it? He's clearly a persona non grata here.
Right.
He has nothing to lose if Elena loses her position.
Right. So it's kind of strange.
I don't know why he stayed there anyway. What was his reason for staying there?
I don't know. I forget what it is, but it also seems somewhat that's not like a realistic thing.
He's a stranger in a strange land. He's still mourning his lover.
Maybe.
Although there's some interesting conspiracies that he's actually not even gay, and he just conned Thomas into thinking that he loved him.
Oh, I don't don't know about that. Well, anyway, he says, oh, yeah, open up your rooms. And then he tells Elena, oh, I saved you. And she's like, okay. And it's like, okay, your doctor ploy, though, I don't know how long that's going to last. And these people seem a little angry. So, I don't know. Got that going on. And then we also check in with Maddie and Nick. And, you know, she's really pissed about the heavy metal music that's going on, the thrasher music.
And in this scene, we do see that there's actually 8 vehicles in the convoy, but I feel like in the first episode, they didn't show us that many.
No, they did not.
It could have been a problem with, like, you know, the base being overrun. People are going to get the F out of Dodge and then rendezvous later. So
right. And Nick is being, I think, pretty reasonable here. He's just like, what are we doing? And, you know, and she's just like, look, we got to play along and play to our advantage, whatever we need to do. And when they get to the ranch, somebody comes out to greet them, and it turns out that, and they find out immediately that the helicopter has not arrived. And, you know, I don't know, if I was Maddie, I would not necessarily let Troy go in there without me, because you don't want that guy to spin any kind of story, and that's clearly what he's going to do. So that was a little strange. I mean, not that they have too much leverage, but there seemed like there was a little space there to negotiate. But, you know.
The ranch has some interesting geographical elements. Like, there's this ravine.
Yep. That
seems like a natural barrier, but that's only on one side, and then it's also kind of in a valley surrounded by these big hills that to me are like a weakness, unless they have fortifications on top of those hills.
And they have the manpower to be lookouts on all of those hills. Like, it just seems like there's a lot of points where people or walkers could come in with no issue.
Yeah. I mean, the one upside to having the settlement be kind of in a low-lying area is that the odds of having running water or fresh water are better there than on a hilltop. But it was curious.
Well, and they also have, I mean, they have a lot of livestock, and they're all kind of, the livestock's a little bit spread out, and to me, like, how they're sort of keeping them, I think would be very hard to protect. Again, from walkers or from other people. They're not close to, or close enough, I think, to the civilization. Seems to be a lot of, like, caravan type, like, camper van things going on in this.
Tents.
So there's that.
It has the look of a refugee camp, less than a, like, planned community.
Right.
For exactly a scenario like this, right?
Right. And once again, Nick and Maddie are arguing about what's going on, and Nick's like, we got to go find everybody, and Maddie's like, no, we got to stay put, and she's right about this. She's like, what if they come here, and then they have to find us? That doesn't make sense. And then in a very strange way, shows him that she has a gun, which is kind of creepy, because it makes it, they, like, hug, and it's kind of like, she almost seems like she's, like, moving his hand to her butt, and that's...
Yeah, she does. She puts her son's hand on her ass.
It's not right. And then the old dude comes up, who turns out to be Otto, and he's Troy's dad. Again, with this coffee. I don't know. I would not, and she doesn't drink the coffee.
The more on this body language, when they're having this overly familiar hug, this is a thing that I guess happens in shows and movies, because actors are humans, and while you're not, you know, there's this, like, tell when you look at someone's lips and then they're at their eyes, it's like, it's a tell about, like, I want to get with you, right?
Yeah, there's some chemistry there, and it was creepy.
She's looking at his mouth a lot, is all I'm saying, while she's putting his hand on her ass.
Yeah, no, it's an odd scene.
This apparently happened in what's that girl teenager detective show that you love so much, Kristen Bell?
Oh, Veronica Mars.
Veronica Mars. There's apparently a scene early on in that show where she and her dad have a moment like that, where he has that reaction to her, that people tend to point out and say, "Oh boy, that's awkward."
You know what? I don't know that I ever saw that. I'll have to rewatch, but.
But yeah, as you were saying though, then Jeremiah Otto, who was played by Dayton Cali, comes, and then they have a Deadwood reunion between Kim Dickens and Dayton Cali, who are both from Deadwood. Yep. Dayton Cali is awesome. I hope that he's a good guy, because I can't live with the fact that I can't live with him being a bad guy.
You mean a bad character or a bad person?
Like, what's the difference?
I don't know.
Dayton Callie is a good actor. Jeremiah Otto, I would like him to be a good guy.
Yeah. So far, tough to tell.
Yeah, he's cagey, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
the way he deals with Madison stealing that gun, I think, is very even-handed and
Mm-hmm.
not silly, like an Alexandrian would say. You have to turn that gun in,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just like, just sign for the gun.
Yep.
I really
And
like the way they handled that.
he seems somewhat even overall, and definitely trying to be fair. He has a little bit of that. Um, he doesn't have the governor aspect. He doesn't seem like a megalomaniac. He seems reasonable for the most part, but he
Yeah,
seems also very, strict or very. He's adhering to whatever principles he has in place. We just don't know what they are yet.
we're
That
not
is my
100%
impression.
sure what his agenda is.
Yep.
Yeah, but he's probably 80-20, nice and charming. I just met you, and this is crazy, but you should be grateful that you're here.
Right.
Is also like the 20% of him being
Well,
like, yeah, don't look the gift horse in the mouth.
right, and he is asking her questions which any community would have to ask if the helicopter's missing. And so he asks if Travis could possibly take it over, and Maddie's like, "Oh, roll." She does a little bit of an eye roll, and she's like, "No." And they do get let in, and they get treated some okay, but there's
They get
definitely
given a house. I mean,
yeah,
that's
like and showers
incredible.
and all that kind of thing, and
I love how dirty this family is,
yeah,
especially Alicia. By the time Alicia shows up at the camp, she is filthy and
filthy.
her hair is a disaster. And I'm like, this is great.
Yep.
I really enjoy it when they let people get as
Messy.
disgusting as they should be living out in
Yep.
the open.
So there's that. And then they zoom back to what's going on with Jake and Alicia and Lucy. And Lucy's just kind of unconscious at this point. And Charlene and all of them are giving each other, Charlene and Jake are giving each other kind of like interesting looks about Lucy, kind of not to each other, not that Alicia can see what's going on. And about moving double time to get home. They get stuck outside and have to keep watch. And immediately, this scene moved pretty quickly. I mean,
Yeah,
Charlene goes off to keep watch. And you know how when in films or movies or whatever, someone keeps watch and they all say, "Oh, this is the sound" or whatever. They actually use it here really, really quickly.
yeah. Like within 5 minutes of
Yeah,
her leaving the campfire.
yeah. And Jake shares that they had a history and all this other stuff, and also shares that Troy is like a sociopath, and this has always been going on. And Jake does trust Alicia with a gun, so that shows some trust, and it's a good thing he does because then he gets. I don't understand quite how somebody who would be this savvy how this would happen, but he somehow falls down a hill.
It's dark.
I don't know. Well, anyway, uh, he is attacked by walkers. Alicia saves him, and then he has to do Charlene in, so she doesn't become a walker. Did
He
she?
has some weird problem. Like, also, you're talking about him being savvy. He also cannot get his gun to work.
No, ever. Wait, so is it? So did Charlene fall and hit her head, or was she beset? Like, did the walkers get her?
It's unclear.
Okay,
By the time we see her, she's obviously got three walkers on her. The fact that they were there that close makes me think it was them.
okay.
She was whistling, so she knew that there was a problem before she fell,
Hmm.
or if she fell.
Well, Jake does what he's got to do, and then it's just him and Alicia and Lucy. Um, and we've got
I wonder how much Lucy weighs.
she seems like she weighs more than you would think, and it's kind of hard to lug somebody along like
I mean,
this.
120 pounds of dead weight. If she, let's say it's not, it might not even be 120, but 120 pounds of dead weight is still a sick amount of weight to carry.
Right,
That's not like designed to like a backpack, you know?
right. Um, and then things are back at the ranch or back at the hotel. Things are not going very well for Strand because, you know, they seem like they're going okay at first because he's kind of pulling off the fake doctor thing because people just have like bumps and bruises. And then like they bring in this pregnant woman and it's like, okay, even if he was a doctor, he's not necessarily going to be like an OBGYN, you know what I mean? He's not necessarily somebody who's going to know what to do with the baby. That's a pretty specialized thing to do.
I'm just glad that they didn't make us watch like a ER style
Oh man, I was
emergency
so happy. I was so worried about it.
emergency
Oh,
birth episode of someone who we don't care about. Like right? I mean, if Alicia gets knocked up and we have to do an emergency birth episode of Alicia or Ophelia or someone, yeah, sure, we'll stick it out, but not for a
a
an extra.
rando.
Yeah.
Well, and also I kept expecting him to yell out, "Okay, boil some like towels or
Yeah.
something," and because that's what
In
they
hot
always say.
water and cloths.
Yes, but that's not
Yeah.
what happened.
So
So
he just
thankfully,
he's able to successfully deliver a baby, which I find extremely unlikely.
yeah,
But then,
yeah, especially since they're
uh,
both covered with blood, him and Elena. And Elena's like, "All right, man, now you got to leave. That was great and all, but you're out of here."
you're done. He's like, why did I ever let them not choke you to death on your own gate?
Yep.
That would be my
And then
reaction.
she's like, "Yeah, you can't take a car or anything." And then Hector's like, "And before you go, you got to save this woman." It's like, why would he even do this? I don't think he would.
Well,
And
because he does this quest. This is very video gamey to me.
I know.
Because he does this quest, he gets a quest reward of her car.
Yep. So the person they're talking about is Eileen, who is the mother of the bride who had stabbed him. They have a little like confess. They confess to each other all these things. He's very hopeful because of this new baby that we never even see but that is named after him is delivered, and she's all being mystical and sad and depressed and basically gives him some car keys before she takes a header off the balcony. Um, and it is a little Legend of Zelda that he gets these keys.
Yeah. And
But
he goes his appearance when he's down in the parking garage is also very strand. He's cleaned himself up.
yeah, he
He
looks
ain't going
good.
out like no schmo.
Yep, and that car is not going to attract any attention at all.
Yeah, and it's great. It's got off-road capability. No, it's a
No.
Porsche, right?
Yeah,
Is it a Porsche
yeah,
or
I think so.
something?
And I'm like, what are you going to do with that, man? I don't know what that's. You're going to be able to do that in the like Mexican desert or anywhere else you might be going. This doesn't make sense, but he's pretty happy about it because it's his style and it's his color. So yeah. But I wonder.
Yeah.
It doesn't really. We don't really know what is going to happen to him or where his journey will now take him.
We need his character to get some relevance to this storyline pretty
Yeah,
quick.
I still like the character. I just feel like they keep doing these weird things with him that don't make sense, and they need to sort of flesh that out a little bit. Um,
Alicia, and Jake and Lucy make it back to camp, and
and yet
this
another
results in a
implausible scene.
a stupid scene where why has Jake offered to carry her all the way back if he thought this was going to be an outcome?
Right. I feel like he would have told Alicia what was going on and probably taken care of what was going on with Lucy there. I don't know that they would have taken her all the way back. And it seemed like he kind of knew just the way that he and Charlene had been looking at each other. But I just don't think that he would have done this. I don't think he would have let this be a surprise to her.
Why? Yeah, and why do they now let Troy take the lead on this scenario?
Yeah, why would they do this? Because he's
Like,
crazy.
and he's obviously overstepped his mandate and started murdering innocent people at the last time they gave him any kind of rope.
Right,
But
but the
his
dad
dad
doesn't
and his
know
brother
that yet.
stand by and don't do anything. Maybe. Yeah, I guess he probably doesn't know that because Jake just got there.
Right. But
But
still, it seems like Jake would have spoken up or Jake would have said something on Lucy's behalf. And then instead, Jake's like, no, this is how we do things here. And it's like, that's insane. And then there's a very, again, another implausible scene where, Nick's like, oh, let me be the one to kill her. And there's this weird thing between those two. And he takes the gun and then is going to shoot Troy. And this whole thing, again, just seems totally crazy. And, Madison's down for the count because she now realizes that Travis is not there. And that's, she's puking a lot. She's pretty upset.
it's a long time for the payoff for his death, for us to have to wait from, minute 3 of the episode
To the very end.
to minute 40 or whatever it is, for her to have her like emotional reaction and for basically, which is our cathartic moment, to be like, holy crap,
Yep.
they just killed off like the Maori warrior.
Yep. And she, what's up with her in that tree? She's just like hanging on the tree, puking a lot. And
She
then
loves that tree.
she loves it. And, I just don't. this is the whole thing. Like, this is a community. They have clear rules. If these are the rules, and Maddie's group could be overpowered very easily. I just feel like they would have no qualms about taking away that gun from Nick and just taking out
Yeah.
both him and
No.
Lucy. But they don't. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, well, we were just kidding. Tie her up and put her in
They
the
should
infirmary.
they
And you
should
guys,
they should shoot Nick in the head as soon as he does
right?
the thing with the
And
gun.
then they were like, oh no, okay, now you're free to go and go comfort your sister. Go hang out in your trailer that we nicely gave you. Otto's like having Madison check out the gun. So there's like, I don't know, there's lots of weird
Yeah.
stuff here that I don't feel is realistic. And I do want to say that this is one of the problems I have with this series is that I feel like the writers don't have a clear direction about what they're doing. I don't feel like they develop the characters or the rules for those characters in a way that makes sense. And even when they sometimes manage to go there, they break those rules incessantly. And I just don't, I don't know. How do you feel about it so far with these first two episodes?
I was disappointed about Travis leaving the show,
Me too.
Cliff Curtis leaving the show rather, and to speak to this part of the show exactly where we are, I really think the Kim Dickens threat that they're going to take this place, like very Rick-esque in Alexandria. I'm like, get over yourself. You are not going to take anything.
Yeah, and if it turns out that she's Rick's sister, I'm going to lose my mind. Come on.
Rick's sister?
No,
Is that a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, that's a whole thing. Is that her maiden name? Because she talked about being from the South to Strand and all this stuff, and so people have theories that she's somehow related to Rick. And I really, really, really hope that that is not what they do. But and I just this doesn't even make any sense. Like, why would they take over at this point? But
Yeah, it makes zero sense.
based upon the things that they know at this point. I mean, yes, they had the Troy thing, but it seems like everybody else are following other rules, and at least at this point, seems like Otto wants to have like a good community, a sanctuary, and he wants everybody to be safe there. So at this point, we're not seeing anything creepy from him. And the rules that they have, the idea that the injured might turn and take out people, that doesn't seem completely unreasonable, depending on how injured somebody might be. But
And how unsecure your hospital tent is or whatever.
right, like that makes some sense to me. Or although you could argue that maybe you treat that if a person is at that risk and they might be able to be helped, maybe figure out a way to do that. But their rules at this point make sense. There's nothing governor-esque about the vibe going on here, at least at this point.
Yeah, with the departure of the Travis character, I'm not totally psyched about who we have left. We got Nick, who has all these all these weaknesses in terms of, although he hasn't had a relapse, but his like independent streak is usually annoying rather than like empowering. His devotion to Lucy is like nice, but because I like her character, but she seems to be out for the count. Maybe they'll bring her back.
God, I hope so, because she's so much more fun when she's conscious.
Yes, Alicia is okay, but she's kind of a mute this entire two episodes.
It's weird, right? Like
She doesn't.
She
I mean,
cries.
maybe she
gives some
shoots
very
some zombies.
doe-eyed thing going on. She doesn't really talk.
Hands a knife, or she hands knives to people when they need knives, and she shoots zombies when they need zombies shot. But she has like no agency.
No, and it felt
then
almost
Maddie,
it felt almost like they were like, "Oh, you get paid this much money for each word you say. Well, we're not gonna let you say anything." Like, it was so little.
yeah,
She said Travis once.
but I did really enjoy how dirty she is.
Yeah, that was good.
But then Maddie, when she says dumb things like "we're gonna take this place over," and there's like, oh, there's three of you, and none of you were that good, and I don't really care about these three right now. Even though a family of three at this level of the apocalypse is like a valuable thing, Rick managed to keep his until season 3.
Yep. And then he actually got an extra one with Judith, but
right, true. Now he has a family of 3.
But I also think, like, Travis was one of the most interesting characters, and I've always Maddie's character has always been problematic to me. I kept hoping more for Alicia's character. Ophelia, we haven't seen her for a while. Strand, they just don't really develop that much. Travis seemed
They did develop Strand a lot last season.
They did, but I mean, they're not.
They're wasting that capital.
They're wasting him, and then, but the Travis evolution was the most interesting thing. So it was so depressing to me that they got rid of him. Maybe they're doing this, obviously because of his conflicts, but maybe this will allow them to develop other characters a little bit more. Let's hope so. But for now, I am still not feeling it, but I will slog through it with you, my friend.
That's all we can do.
Yeah, so let's see what happens. I'd love to hear from what other people think, if they actually watched it based upon the audience numbers. That is perhaps a low expectation that I will set for that. But feel free to reach out to us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can just check out our website and leave a comment, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Hey, I've got one last piece of news before I say goodbye.
Okay.
Did you know that Dave Erickson is leaving the show at the end of this season?
I did not.
Yes, he is. He announced this actually in March, which we missed.
Oh.
So he is the showrunner. He is the Gimple, and he is going to say adios after season 3.
Interesting. Well, this could either mean it's a very good season or a very bad season. Because
we'll have to wait and see.
If he wants to wrap it up and make it something great, hats off to you, sir. So I hope that's the case.
Maybe he's going to blow it all up by the end of the season. They've already been greenlit for a 4th season. So
yeah, I saw that.
You can't do anything to stop. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe sure the network could always change its mind. But very interesting indeed.
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting. I wonder who they will. I wonder what they will do next. And he had something else going on apparently with AMC, so
yeah,
he's still going to do
other
other projects with them. So they're still happy with him. So maybe he demanded to try other stuff, or maybe he felt like he was too spread too thin. But
maybe his talents are being wasted on this spin-off show. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for listening. Give us a holler. And goodbye.
Ciao.